Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight's show ties up our Mothman series and our look at trauma from the last show about the Silver Bridge collapse and how so many people went on to have very productive careers. I'm not a ghost expert. That's why Nightlight Part 2 doesn't have a whole lot of ghost-themed shows. Yeah, when I was little, I would have expected to see a ghost, but I never saw a face, peering through the cracked closet door, but the context was there. I believe in the Holy Ghost, but I haven't seen a ghost or spirit. Some of my favorite literature is afterlife stories like The Inferno and A Christmas Carol. Growing up, I watched a lot of the Christopher Lee Dracula movies and The Shining. I'm kind of a lot like the countless others from various cultures over tens of thousands of years, who ponders, where do we go when we die? We have an odd passage, like for example, there's an odd passage in Luke 24 where the disciples didn't recognize the just resurrected Jesus. Let's reading from my college Bible. Now, as they talked this over, Jesus himself came up and walked by their side, but something prevented them from recognizing him. What's something? I think that needs an explanation. Is that some kind of mystery that maybe is being researched now? I don't know. It's just I don't know what the phrase something means. Anyhow, to help us get started with answering these questions, paranormal experiencer, author LYNN MONET is our guest. She's on all the big shows, well, even doing 2 on Sunday. So maybe she's rested for tonight's show. But she you frequently see her talking about hospital ghosts in her Omnipresent book series. Her website is lynnmonet.com, and to commemorate her momentous debut on Nightlight, I did a drawing, and see, here is LYNN Monet on Claude Monet's Japanese bridge. How about that? And she's using her goodness to get rid of the bad paranormal critters at a crossroads. See, like the water and land there. So that's I hope you like that, Lynn. That's
I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, it makes me feel so empowered and special. Thank you.
I worked really hard on
the little fish and everything. They were perfect.
It's a demon face.
You know, actually, the orbs, they do come in upside down like that a lot of times, and the mouth is on the top and the eyes are on the bottom, and they do look like that. So, yeah, hell dogs look a little different, though, but yeah.
I don't know, just trying to work in a variety of things. You talk about the dog man thing and ghosts, UFOs up here. So, okay, so at least I got a little bit of things right for tonight. Just you have about an hour and 45 minutes to correct me if I screw anything else up. But
no, you did great.
Okay, so you had a career in geriatrics, which would require seeing people at their weakest, and kind of as they're wrapping up their lives and at the time of death. Yeah, uh, kind of saw something, one time when I was dealing with a situation like that. Did you ever see an older person, like, kind of turn their head to you and they look like they're 12? And like, what is that? It's a little bit like in the Twilight Zone episode, the Purple Testament, where the general saw, you know, a special look on the soldiers' faces, and he knew who would not be returning from the day's battle. But did you ever see something like in someone's face that makes uh, them you have a glimpse of what they look like, maybe 70 some years earlier?
You know, that has happened on one occasion with a lady, and it was brief. And the thing about it is she was in her 90s, and she had asked me, she knew that her time of death was coming close. She was alert and oriented. She asked me, she was concerned because her husband had died in a car accident when he was 35, and she was like 32 years old. And she was concerned that when she did end up passing and crossing over, that he would be repulsed by her aged appearance. And I explained to her that the soul doesn't age. The median age on the other side is 35, actually. So she would appear, and not only that, because since he transitioned, he's very aware of the aging process that she's been through, but he sees her as the 35-year-old woman. And there was a glimpse of where it rippled over and kind of rippled back. And she was very pleased to know that he would recognize her and that she would appear the beauty that she was at the time that he had passed. That's the thing too about death and dying is when our loved ones do come to approach us, they do appear as we remember seeing them last. So, and I don't mean in the sense that, like, for instance, if someone has been riddled with a debilitating disease or cancer that they have lost down to like 70 pounds. I mean, the last time that we've seen them healthy, they do show up in that way. And just to mention too, yes, they do wear clothes. They do have that sort of thing. Nobody wants to see their loved one approach them in the nude, so they are appropriate that way. And I had some great experiences, and I've been a nurse for 40 years. I just recently turned 62 years old, and 17 of that was in end of life care. And I have been able to experience so many beautiful things during that time of people passing. I get to hear about babies that weren't born yet. Many, even people with Alzheimer's that have come back in with those lucid moments, who have also recognized seeing the angels. I have the gift of second sight. I've had the gift ever since I was a child. Where we grew up 3 short blocks behind a hospital. So it was commonplace for my siblings and I to see people in patient gowns walking through the house, or Indians, because there were also Indian mounds on the other side of the hospital. And it was so common to us, because it was like, there's a door, there's a toaster, there's a dead person. We never learned to be afraid. But back in the 60s, which I was born in 1963, you didn't talk about those sorts of things, because they would literally send the men in white coats to your door to pick you up and take you off and do a lobotomy. So it was kept kind of hush hush in the family. And it's not, something that parents wanted supported, because everything was about what the Joneses thought. So yes, I've seen many, many, many beautiful things, and have so many wonderful things to share, hoping to bring comfort to those who have perhaps lost someone or been recently diagnosed with a terminal illness. Death is something that should really be celebrated instead of grieved, because if people could see what I see, they would be overjoyed for the loved ones getting to pass. And not only that, life really begins once this one ends. This is a difficult place to be. And so, yeah, I'm hoping with the experiences that I've had as a nurse, and other nurses have seen as well, to bring some comfort and enlightenment to people. And I wanted to mention too, it is not about religion. I've seen Jewish people pass. I've seen Christians pass. I've seen Jehovah's Witnesses pass. I've seen all kinds of people pass that are connected to God. And it's all the same thing, where the loved ones come in. There are 3 different types of death. There's natural death, which most of us have. There is sudden death, which is handled a little bit differently on the other side. And then there's the near-death experience, where we have people coming back talking about some of the things that they've seen. However, it's not complete, because they haven't finished and stayed there. So there are some limits as to some of the information that they do come back with. But most of these situations have been people that have passed naturally, and I'll be happy to share some of those stories with you if you'd like.
Oh, yeah. If you want to give us, some samples, the near-death experience sounds interesting. I just want to maximize your expertise. I'm learning a lot, along with the viewers.
Okay. There's one thing as a nurse that I couldn't dispute. It was the one thing that really brought it home for me. I had a patient that was blind. She had been totally blind for 10 years. She couldn't see speckles, shadows, nothing. And she'd been on my unit for about 2 weeks. And I love to tell this story, and I'm sure you've heard me mention it on other shows, but I tell it for those that haven't heard it, because it's so significant. Her son and daughter came to the nurse's station, and they said to me, "Mom's talking to people in the room that aren't there." And I expected that, because the loved ones do come forward. And I want to make this clear to everyone, even if there is not a physical person in the room with their loved one at the time of their loved one's last breath, no one ever dies alone. There's always a spiritual family there with them, helping them transition over. So if that would bring peace of mind to people who maybe are like, "Oh, I didn't make it in time," or "Mom, I wasn't there for Mom when she passed." They didn't die alone. They had a whole slew of loved ones that came in to help them cross over. But back to Edna. So I said to the son and daughter, being in a professional setting, I'm like, well, let me walk down to your mama's room with you and check on her, see if she's comfortable, if, she needs her pillow adjusted, or anything that I can do for her. And really, I was going down there to comfort the family. So we walked down together and we walked in the room. Edna's sitting at a slant and she's reaching up into the sky and she's smiling. She's very happy with whatever it is that she's receiving, something that was like very delicate, like a snowflake or something being handed to her, the way that she was acting. And I asked her, I said, Edna, who's here? And she says, George. Well, her daughter had to sit down and turned as white as a sheet. And she said, well, George is my father, and he passed away X amount of years ago. And so then Edna pipes up and she says, and he's glad that you're taking good care of Pixie. Pixie was Edna's poodle. At the time that George passed away, the son had to take possession of Pixie the poodle because Edna, being blind, could no longer care for the dog. The dog just so happened to still be a very elderly dog, but was still very much alive. And the son told me the story about how, he had the dog. And he asked me, he said, do you think my mom's hallucinating? And of course, in a medical setting where everything is treated with a pill, I couldn't come out and say, no, I don't think your mom's hallucinating. I think she's seeing your father. So I turned it around and I said, well, do you think she's hallucinating? And he's like, well, I don't know. And I said, being a nurse and having people, seeing hundreds and hundreds of people pass away and leave this earth, I've seen things that have occurred and I'm not trying to change your beliefs, but there's consistent things that have occurred with many, many people. And do you mind if I try something? And he said, no. And I said, Edna, can I ask George a question? And she nodded her head yes. And I said, what color is your son's shirt? And she said, yellow. He was wearing a yellow Ralph Lauren polo shirt. Now, her being blind, the only way that she could have known that her son was wearing a yellow polo shirt was if George had told her. So George the Spirit had told her. And in that moment, the son especially got it. And he's like, hi, Dad. And I told him, I said, well, let me leave you now with your mom and your dad. And it's really, really sometimes sad that people miss that opportunity to communicate with the other side themselves during the time of transition. A lot of times the person's filters efface so they can hear the telepathy, which is a sensory thing that we take on when we cross over. We do keep all of our senses. A lot of times people argue about the smell one, but it's not about an olfactory smell. It's about a memory recall. My mom had made mention from the other side that when I had asked her if she had missed the taste of potato salad or the chocolate brownies that she used to make, and she's like, well, we don't eat here. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know that. And she said, but we do everything by thought. Like if we want to go somewhere, we're immediately there. We just think of it. And she said, when it comes to food, we think of it and the flavor and the sensation comes to us as if we are eating it. And I thought, well, wasn't that wonderful, with ice cream or something very fattening that I love to eat and no calories. But she was explaining it that way. So it's more of a memory recall. And if you think about it, if you think of the smell of walking into a movie theater with popping popcorn, you can smell it even though you're not even in a movie theater. And if you think about its flavor, you can also taste it. However, it's like on steroids on the other side. So they're able to do these things through memory recall, and they gain other senses such as the telepathy, the ability to use their minds to maneuver and things like that. They're also able to be in 6 places at one time, which I found to be interesting. In a case of a near-death experience family member that had talked about that. But, people don't realize that they have the opportunity to communicate with their loved ones on the other side through the person that is transitioning, because the person transitioning can hear the spirit realm as well as they can hear the human embodied people verbalizing. And, you know, I mean, think about how many times somebody has wanted to ask Uncle Bob what he did with the clock, or so and so what they did, buried the money. I mean, you know, this is their chance to ask. And if the spirit is present in the room, they can respond. And if they're not, they can be retrieved and then brought forward. So, yeah, you know, there's a lot of things. There's some very beautiful things about the transitioning from this world into another one. We don't die, people. We really do not die. We simply shed our meat suits and go on. If you want to take it from a scientific standpoint, and now energy can't be created or destroyed, so it changes form, and that's basically what we do. You know, there is a God. I call you know, God is what my word for source or higher power, who whatever you want to call the creator. The soul does come from that. However, the body comes from the earth. When earth was created, it was kind of like a walnut where all of our bodies and everything were created at that time, just like the leaves on walnut trees and things like that. Of course, those things were created by the creator. And then that's how it kind of laid out and, you know, became that way. So that is why we are birthed into our bodies on this earth. But when we pass, our souls go back and our bodies stay here and become dust, for lack of a better word. Or what is considered dust. It stays here along with a lot of the other attributes of this earth that are not so positive, you know, the sorrow, the sickness, depression, things like that, that stay embodied in the remains that are left behind, whereas the love and the joy and all of the good things leave with the soul. So
okay. If we go from the hospital setting, you know, you have house setting stories as well. But yeah, on a lot of podcasts, you know, people talk about like, you know, the ghosts at you know, Gettysburg. You've, you know, been there. So what are some of the differences in, you know, home, hospital, you know, battlefield setting? You know, people are dying for different reasons. That goes back to the sudden death that you were talking about. So what is keeping people in the different settings that you know, you talk about, or, you know, hear about on a lot of other podcasts? Why are they stuck there?
you know, it's a choice. They are keeping themselves stuck here. At the time of death, you were given the option to choose to cross over or not. And a lot of times, based on like traditional beliefs of whatever they were told, sometimes they don't feel worthy, you know, to cross, or they're afraid of meeting their maker, you know, their creator, that they might be going somewhere else or whatever. A lot of times, you may have a loved one that is taking care of, say, a child or an elderly person, and all of a sudden the caretaker passes unexpectedly before the other person does, and they remain here to watch over them. And then when the other person passes, the original caretaker gets stuck here. So a lot of times it is that sort of thing. Even with the Gettysburg thing, sometimes with the sudden death and things like that, they choose it's handled differently. For one thing, they have to acknowledge that they're dead, and a lot of them are wandering around and they don't realize that they're dead. You have to tell them, you can give them the option. And I have a prime example, if you don't mind me sharing another experience.
Okay, so that's basically like the Sixth Sense movie. Like they don't know they're dead.
A lot of times they don't. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. You've got a lot of those mafia characters that are in the bars around Gettysburg with their mistresses, and they don't want to cross over. So, and I mean, I had, as I had mentioned, I had a patient that was actively passing, and I had my med cart in front of her room, and I was getting her some things to make her feel more comfortable. And I see the spirit of this man peeking out from around the pillars in the sitting area in front of me. And I said to him, I said, hi, why haven't you crossed over? And he's like looking over his shoulder because he doesn't realize that I'm talking to him. Because most people, if they could see him, they would run off screaming, wetting their pants, And so this was an opportunity, And so I said, no, you there. And he was a handsome fellow. He looked to be maybe in his middle to late 30s. He had reddish colored hair. He looked, the way that he was dressed was upper middle class, but not upper class. I mean, he wasn't poor. He had nice clothes on, but not the fancy ones that a lot of the upper middle class wore. And the thing about spirits when they haven't crossed over, the way that I see them is their wound, their death, the cause of death still shows. So he had this area on his abdomen that looked kind of like Swiss cheese. So to me, that meant that he died of some kind of a corrosive disease like cirrhosis of the liver or some kind of a cancer, perhaps. And finally, I, made mention to him. I said, listen, this lady over here, I mean, they come around, they come, the souls that are lost here come around when another person's passing because they're curious, they come around, and sometimes they will go with them. Sometimes they don't. They usually lose their way. And I'm going to write this down real quick so I don't forget to mention this thing, which will also help others help those cross over if they want to. And again, it's if they want to, they still have freedom of choice. So he finally came over to my cart. He had this very heavy Irish brogue. And I said to him, I said, I can help you cross over. I said, this is probably a once in a millennium deal for you, because again, most people, if they could see you, they'd run off screaming, and I can help you. And he said to me, "Milady, I can't cross over." And I said, "Well, of course you can. Why can't you cross over? I can help you cross over." And he says, "I can't cross over. My mistress and my wife were on the other side, and neither one knew about the other." So he had earthbound himself here all of that time because he didn't want to cross over and have to face either one of them, now that they both would know that he was cheating, even though I tried to reassure him that it doesn't work like that, that more than likely, they already know, and whatever feelings of negativity they would have had towards him for doing that, they understand the reasons behind it because everything is pre-done before you even come here, of some of the things that you do or the paths that you take. And not only that, they may not even be there anymore. So, it just, and that's another interesting thing too. Some of the things that I've seen come to the room that are just magnificently beautiful at the time of people passing that are a little different. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So the Irish guy had, maybe cirrhosis, you said.
Mhm.
What about, you get the Doubting Thomas story where Thomas has to touch the nail wound. It, there are, I don't know, that. Let's just stop at that example. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But do you get to, once you cross over, do you get healed, the say battlefield wounds healed, do you go through the afterlife with any scars from just being alive and having a long life, and running around through the woods and get scraped up. I've often wondered about th things like that. What what have you thought about um, such topics, or what have you seen?
Okay. Well, first of all, when they do transition over, their addictions are gone, their mental illness is gone, their cause of death does not show. The thing that's interesting between the spirit and a ghost, and there is a difference. Ghosts, I can always see their feet because they're literally walking around earthbound. And spirits, usually I don't see their feet. They're more floaty, and they come in. They can come into. I can see them clearly in my peripheral vision, as solid as I can see you. Otherwise, there are times if they're up closer, it's like a waffling to the air, kind of like gas fumes in the air or vapors coming off of a hot road. They kind of appear, that energetic thing, with me. And I'm sorry, I'm getting off the beaten path of what you asked. So please ask me that question again. I want to make sure that I'm answering it correctly.
Um, y- you said something about the Irish guy had indications of maybe cirrhosis. So
Mm-hmm. The cause
okay,
of Yeah, the cause of death was still obvious. That's because he had not crossed. The thing about it is when you do not cross, you still have your mental illness, you still have addiction, you still have the cause of death show. You do still keep all of your senses. However, telepathy is not one that is entered into, gifted to you like you would if you did cross over. And the thing about it, the thing about it is too, is that people, I just lost my train of thought. Um, those those woohoo,
no
those things.
telepathy after you cross.
No, you have telepathy when you cross. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, those filters start to open when you're in that state of transition because they communicate with telepathy on the other side. They don't communicate with the telepathy here. And a lot of people can see, they can see their loved ones coming in even way ahead of time. However, it's unfortunate that the medical field thinks that every time someone is seeing something that they can't see, that they're hallucinating, and they, medicate it. And it doesn't always work out because a lot of times, since it's not something that is a hallucination, the medication doesn't work because the people, are still talking about seeing their loved ones and things like that. But if they stay earthbound, they keep those things. And the thing that is interesting about it is if people could see what I see, those spirits that haven't crossed over, that they still remain with their addictions, people would be shocked if they saw how many dead people are standing around them at their cigarette break, just trying to get a whiff of that cigarette smoke, or at a bar. I walked into a pub one time and there was this lady and this man. They were sitting at the bar, engaged in a conversation. And this lady had a rock glass that looked like she had bourbon or some brown liquid in it. And there was this headless spirit literally sitting his head on the bar. And the nose was like over the top, kind of sniffing it. Because again, the memory recall. And then there are times too that there are some spirits that if they can use the loosh that's given off by humans through their fear or their sorrow or their depression, they radiate this loosh type energy that the otherworldly beings that aren't so nice can manipulate. They can do more human acts. Sometimes you'll even see a spirit enter into the back of a person that is at a bar, for instance, having a drink, and all of a sudden you'll notice that the person that comes to the bar, as a matter of fact, Cisco talks about this in her book, about, because she was a bartender, and she talked about this one person in particular that would come in and just order like a tonic water. And he was a nice guy, he'd have conversation, and all of a sudden she'd see what she called a jumper moving into the back of this person, and immediately his demeanor would change, and he'd ask for some hard liquor on the rocks, and you could see the demeanor change, and you can. So I have also seen similar things like that, where they kind of enmesh inward. For the most part, they stay separate. But, there are a lot of things that people do with addictions that if they knew that they were being watched and joined by a fan club along with them, they surely wouldn't be doing them anymore. And that's for sure.
Okay.
It's pretty scary, some of that. But those aren't the spirits that have crossed over, they don't do that, but they can come and go freely. They can pop in anytime. And having the ability to be in 6 places at one time, they can be at the dining room table with you while they're in the car driving to work with your sister, or sitting in the chair with your mother, type thing in her room or something like that. So they can be in multiple places at one time once they've crossed over.
Okay, so you've given us several captivating hospital stories and at bars. Okay, one of your omnipresent books is about your house. Okay,
Yes.
so let's kind of look at all the different places that people are going to encounter at some point in their lives. But what made this house that you purchased so unique in the study of the paranormal field?
Well, it was haunted, unbeknownst to me, being a single mother purchasing a house. As a matter of fact, it was so haunted that I never moved in. It was that bad. There were 2 demons and a young man that had hung himself in the house, which was verified by the next door neighbor. The house was actually built in the 1970s, like 1976, I believe. And the thing about it is it's not about the age of the house. It's about the age of the ground that it's built on and what occurred there prior that you're not aware of happened 300 and 500 and 1,000 years ago. So a brand new house can be haunted if it's built in the wrong place. But that particular house, and just to back up a little bit, as a child, I had the gift of second sight, and I was raised Presbyterian, and my mother took a jaunt with another religion for a little while that was very, very much against the people having gifts. It was considered demonic, that you were possessed, and all of those sorts of things, just like the public also would claim as well. So when I purchased this house, the dealings that I had to have with the spirits in the house reawakened a lot of my gifts and made them stronger, because now I was able to connect with people of like mind while seeking help. All of the traditional ways that I tried to seek help, I literally went through the yellow pages and I called every church in the yellow pages, because after I went to my church, I became more frightened by the members of that congregation than of the things that were in that house. They literally turned their back on me, and I had places that I called seeking help, and they would basically say to me that if I was attending their church, I wouldn't be having these problems. And I had another one, because I had made mention that I was a single mother with 2 children at the time. I had a third one since then. And they basically assumed that I was being promiscuous, and stated that if I were not being promiscuous, then these things wouldn't be happening to me. And I hadn't even been out on a date in 4 years. So that wasn't correct either. But I understood, even though their slogan was, what would Jesus do? That they were afraid and didn't know what to do either. So with that house, how much do you want me to tell about that house?
Enough to put the hooks into the viewers, so they buy the book.
Okay, well,
but not give it away.
Okay, the house I purchased in March. I was going to do some renovations on it and then move in during the summer months with my children. They only had 8 weeks of school left when I bought it. So, and the thing about it is I had been looking for a whole year for a house. this poor realtor was dragging me around. And the day that this house came on the market, and I should have listened, she called me and she said, my colleague just came back from taking pictures of this house, and it's in your price range, and it's almost too good to be true type thing. And it's not even on the MLS yet. She just came back with the pictures. So we had rushed over. And the thing was, is being a single person on a single person income, I could only afford a certain amount. So most of the things that I looked at were homes that were older or near a stinky paper mill or needed major renovations. So when it came to this house, I was in awe. I mean, we were living in a single wide trailer in a so-so trailer park that had a river creek thing behind it that would overflow and fill up my walk-in closet, and snakes and all kinds of things like that. So, and window and frequent peeping toms climbing up in the trees to peek in my windows. So I was very looking very forward to moving out of there. I actually purchased that property recovering from a divorce financially that was devastating, and took the time to rebuild my credit. So with that house, I had gone through, there were some things that did occur. When I came back that day, I brought my children, and my daughter, my son had gone downstairs to the lower level. It was a beautiful 2-story split level brick house on a half-acre lot, Florida flat lot. And good luck finding one of those in North Carolina. It was in East Flat Rock, North Carolina. And my daughter came up to me, and I'm standing with the realtor, and she said, Mommy, I don't want to live here. And of course, I'm embarrassed because here this poor realtor's been dragging me around for a year. And here's my teenage daughter saying that she doesn't want to live there. And I just assumed, she's realizing that we're going to be moving from her friends, but still, it's only 20 minutes away. It's not like it's to another state or something like that. And so I asked her, I said, what did you say? And she said, there's something about this house that I don't like, and I do not want to live here. And I should have listened. And I didn't. So I said a prayer, and I said, dear God, if this is meant to be my house, then it'll end up being, my house, and I'll be grateful. So I went ahead and I made my bid, found out that somebody else had made a bid that day as well. So the pressure was on, and it just so happened, obviously, that they accepted my offer. And things started happening pretty much right away in the house. The thing about those, as a matter of fact, I will mention the first day that we had gone over there, I had just gotten the keys. There were problems with this lock on the door, which is a key piece that was manipulated by the hell dog that would run the stairwell. It was a split level house. So you would walk into a foyer, and you had descending stairs and ascending stairs going to the different levels. And I brought makings for dinner. And while I'm in the kitchen making dinner, my daughter comes in to me and she says, what did you want? I said, I didn't call you. And she said, yes, you did. She said, you called me twice. And, what did you want? And I said, no, I didn't call you. I swear on my life I didn't call you. And she's like, well, I swear on my life you did. And then my son comes in, he's peering in from underneath her arm, and he says, Mommy, I heard you call her too. So then I'm trying to rationalize that we're living on a dead-end street, and Brittany and Austin are popular names, and maybe some other mother was out in the front yard calling her kids home to come and eat. But the bottom line being is that these things have an intelligence about them. Within just that short period of time, they figured out that I was the mommy lady, my children's names, and they were able to mimic my voice. So they do have an intelligence about them. And that's what my children heard. It was mimicking my voice, and they thought that it was me calling. So, my belief system didn't allow me to entertain the fact that something like that could even exist. So I kept myself in denial because I was brought up with that second religion that my mom had the family kind of go through. And thank goodness that one was outgrown because it was a difficult religion. But, and I usually don't talk about religion, so that's all I'm going to say about that. But I believe, that those things, again, that I was safe from those things and all of those sorts of things. But so many things happened. Just one spoiler alert was that I couldn't keep workers in the house past 2:00. I had four people come in to work on the house of the renovations that I wanted to start. And only one of them stayed to complete it. And he was stoned all of the time. And I guess because when people have addiction, they carry their own set of demons anyway, or not demons, but spirits, more negative spirits anyway. And so they liked him, and he wasn't bothered by them, and he did great work. And of course, my kids weren't going back at that point anymore because of some things that had occurred. And the work was finally finished. But I mean, I got to find out from a coworker of mine's cousin was there doing work for me, got to find out that what exactly was happening after I had left in the house with tools moving and lights turning on and off, and that sort of thing. And at that particular day, and there's so much more happened. I had to go back to the house in order to pull in an upstairs air conditioner, because the windows were the kind of windows that were crank, and they would open like this instead of up and down. So there was this odd shaped air conditioner, but it was open to the elements, and I was working that weekend, so I wouldn't be going back to the house until Tuesday. I was working a Baylor midnight shift, so I could be home with my kids during the daytime. And so when I asked my next door neighbor, Ellen, to come with me. And when we were standing in the kitchen of that house, we heard this sound that sounded similar to a didgeridoo. It was this vibrating wah-wah kind of sound. And we could see I could see this ectoplasmic wall moving in on us as we were standing in the kitchen. And she was clawed to the point of bleeding on her back and on her stomach while she stood next to me in that house. And I would fight God for my children. Can't imagine any parent that would not fight God for their children. If God wanted to take one of my kids, we would definitely need to have a talk. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that's just the way that parents are. But I swear on my children's lives, what happened, what I'm telling you is the truth. I mean, it was, I would not wish that house on anybody. I would not. The thing about it is that a lot of things happened and occurred during the house. The second demon showed up. The young man was finally released from the house at one point. And I found out that the house was tipping into a ley line, which was where the spirits that were traveling in the ley lines were coming up through an area that was a subfloor where the family room was. And there was a stone fireplace, which they were drawn to because of the energy from the stones. So they would come in through that. And I did find a couple to sell the house to that had come from Florida. And there was one point that we were coming down the stairs, exiting out the front double entry doors. And I overheard the wife say to the husband, "Why did you push me?" And he says, "Well, I didn't push you." He said, I'm 3 steps back from you. I can't even reach you. And she says, "Yes, you did." And he's like, "No, I can't, I can't even reach you." And she came back and she said, "Well, I don't know what happened, but of course I knew what happened. I knew that hell dog that ran the stairs did it." And so when they came out, I couldn't not say something in good conscience. I couldn't sell them the house without them being aware of the issues in the house. So I asked them point blank. I said, "Look, do you believe in ghosts?" And they immediately cut me off and they said, "Nope. We don't believe in those sorts of things. We don't entertain those sorts of things. We're Baptist and we're protected. We don't talk about such things." And I'm like, okay. I would have told them whatever they wanted to know and truthfully about the house if they had asked. In my second book, Omnipresent, What Happened Next, which there's a series of 5 books. So what happened next, there's an actual picture of the book. I don't have it here, but there's a face of a demon in the window that I inadvertently caught, saw it after the fact. I didn't even know that it was there. I was able to get a hold of the family that I purchased the house from and find out what all had occurred with them and their children showing up with bite marks and claw marks and bruises that they couldn't explain. The little kids would actually go to school, and one was at like in K4 and the other one was like in 1st or 2nd grade. And you know how the teachers always ask the kids to draw a picture of their house and their family, and they'll draw the stick people with a giant flower, next to it and type thing. And these children would draw a picture of the house and the family would be on one side, and on the other side would be these dark, creepy looking figures. And when the teachers and the family would ask, what those were, they would say, those are the monsters that live in our house. And so they were seeing them and very, very aware of it. And, I found out so many things and that originally I was told that weren't true, like that the people had already purchased a new house and they were moving out of state because of jobs, only come to find out that they moved 10 minutes away in with her family and they were still working at the same place, after the fact. But I didn't know that at the time. And I was just so grateful to get such a beautiful home. I mean, it was 2,400 square feet, 2-story house. The garage, you could have fit 3 cars in there. Beautiful, beautiful lot. 3 bedrooms upstairs, 2 bath. I mean, it was a really, really nice house. And coming out of a trailer park, I thought that it was my reward. It was my gift from God that I had been rewarded with because I had been through so much with my children. So, and it turned out to be the booby prize. But from that, I did gain some positive things. I was able to have my gift of second sight reactivated in a very, very beautiful way, which then brought me into the realm of, I've been a nurse for 40 years. I've just retired. Being able to see people come out of their bodies at the time of death. I also did in my second book, What Happened Next, I did a rotation. I went back to further my degree later in life as a nurse. And I had to do, and I also have a degree in biological science. I went to a psychiatric ward as part of the rotation of my psych class, where we had to follow people. And I was able to see attachments on people with schizophrenia and people with addiction, which the attachments look different. And some of the sad things with that is that like, we walked into, there were 8 of us nurses with a teacher, and we walked into this room where there were people mulling around that the nurse said were basically forgotten by their families because everybody was considered woo-woo by their families. And I see this little lady sitting at a round table, and she's all by herself, and she's having this conversation almost like on the other end of a telephone. So what she was saying, you could almost tell what the response was that she was getting from whoever it was that she was talking to. And the nurse said, she said, oh, well, that's so-and-so. And she's sitting there talking to people that aren't there. But I could clearly see that there were 3 spirits sitting at that table with the lady.
Maybe they're using.
Pardon me?
Maybe they're using the phone.
Maybe so. They can do that, by the way. I can tell you, for instance, about that happened too, where they kept calling my phone and there was this static. I had a priest and the minister, a Presbyterian minister, come at the same time to bless that haunted house. And after we left, I kept getting, my phone kept ringing, and I kept picking it up, and it was this high-pitched static sound. And after that happened 4 times, it rung a 5th time, and I almost didn't answer it. When I answered it, it was the priest calling from his hotel saying, I just got multiple phone calls here in my room, and every time I answered, the line would drop. Was it you? Are you okay? And I'm like, the same thing just happened here. And he explained that they can energetically manipulate electronics, cell phones, anything electric. They can turn on and off water. They can pull hair. They can leave bite marks, bruise marks, claw marks. They can do all of those sorts of things. And they can push people. They can pull hair. And I've been touched by them before. And I know that if with the force that they're able to touch people with, that they could easily be the cause of SIDS, since there's not really a medical, they're guessing, but there's not really a medical reason for SIDS. But they can, and it's not always cold air. Sometimes there's like a warmth to the air, but it's thick. It's thick, and it's kind of hard to breathe for that matter. But they could overcome a newborn baby sleeping very easily that way, and dub out their life. And because I know this because I've been touched by them before. I was actually attacked during the blessing that was being done on the house by the Presbyterian minister and the Episcopalian priest, I was the one that got attacked because I was the weak link. But anyway, so to go back, so I have had these gifts. I've been able to help people remove, I've been able to remove attachments from people. I don't do demonic attachments, people, so don't reach out to me for that. If you've got an attachment and you've been told that it's something demonic, I don't do that. I only do that for very, very close friends and family members, because it is not something that I want to be exposed to or to deal with. So the other things, yes, I can help with. So I then now have a third book coming out in the Omnipresent series called 111 Becadon Drive, which is where there was a male ghost that was going from townhouse to townhouse, disturbing women in their sleep. And that was interesting in itself. We actually congregated the people that lived in the townhouse complexes. There were 10 of them side by side. Eventually ended up congregating in the parking lot, discussing what had been happening in their homes as far as cabinets slamming and sheets being pulled off, and different things like that, things being thrown against walls and stuff like that. So that one's getting ready to come out as soon as I can get it on the press. It's already written and ready. It's actually been waiting a while. I've had some life things happen in between that have kind of delayed things. I have a fourth book that I'm currently writing in the Omnipresent series that's called Gnome Place Like Home. There will be a second book off of that one, You Don't Know Me, which is an occurrence that I experienced when I inherited my sister's house that has fae and elementals all over that property. It also has a resident Cajun ghost named Bruce, who's very happy. He has crossed over, but he loves to come back because the views in the morning and the evening are so beautiful and it's so peaceful out there. So I'm writing about that to open up, to bring the realms of the elemental and fae back together. In the process of that, I wrote the book Colors of Heaven, which is the one that I had made mention to, talking about death and dying and afterlife that way, to help comfort people and to help take there's such a finality to death. We're taught there's just that it's the end, and it's not. And so hopefully it will bring some enlightenment in a very positive way to people. And then I have one other book called The Gap, which I was asked to write by two counselors. I had a late life baby at 46, so I've got a soon to be 17-year-old at home. And I was looking for a book for her, kind of, everything leaves off with the birds and the bees, and then it goes into some other stuff. But there's that gap there where they really need to talk more about, like, even how to clean out a refrigerator, with vinegar and not Windex, and plug it back in. And, put your phone away if you go out on a date, and it's okay to say no, and it's okay to be who you are. And, different things like that. And also how to set healthy boundaries. So I wrote a book about that called The Gap, What Else Your Adolescent and Teen Needs to Know. To teenagers, you can tell them to set boundaries, but they're clueless as to what that is. You need to tell them what to say, so that, and also in a way that they can save face. Somebody comes and asks you to borrow money, and they've already borrowed money and didn't pay it back, and you don't want to loan it to them, or they want to borrow your car. You can simply say, I'm not able to loan any money at this time. Is there anything else that I can do to help you? And then they save face because they're offering to help, and the person will walk away and say no because they wanted the money, but yet it doesn't make the person angry with them. You know what I'm saying? Or like, oh, well, I'm the only person insured on my car, but I'll be happy to drop you off somewhere if you need a ride someplace. So they have alternatives of what to say, so that they can say no and set that boundary and not be chastised by teenagers, because there's so much drama in those years. So and I did that too. But anyway, that's kind of everything in a nutshell. I'll be happy to go in deeper to any of those array of things that you'd like me to.
What does it say about you with the demon dog and ghosts at the hospital and elementals?
Okay, well, that's three. Those are three shows each in themselves. But the Hell Dog was one of the demons that was in the original omnipresent house. What I did learn is as there's a hierarchy of angels, there's also a sub hierarchy of demons that go in the opposite direction. And as they go in the opposite direction, they become stronger and able to do more physical acts that way. And the Hell Dog, I had a group come in that was able to release the young man from the house that had hung himself. There was a young man from the original people that built the house that did commit suicide in the house. And I had a group that came in, and she said to me, she pulled up in the driveway. And the thing is my daughter was actually sitting out in the front. She had been complaining of pain in her back that had become so severe that I had let her stay home from school that day to take her to her pediatrician. And we were stopping at the house first. And the lady said to me, she looked at my daughter, and who was sitting a distance away from us, and she said, has your daughter been complaining about pain in her left shoulder? And I'm like, yeah. Why? I mean, I'd never mentioned it, I didn't think. And she says, well, she has an attachment. And I said, she does. And so the lady did something energetically, and she and the gentleman that were with her stomped it into the ground. And she said to me, ask your daughter if she's still having any pain. And I asked her, I said, Brittany, are you still having any pain? And she takes her arm and starts going like this, like a helicopter. And she's like, no. And I mean, the pain never came back. So then the lady told me that we needed to go in through the back and the front because the spirits were waiting for her, and they were. But I just wanted to add this bit and piece. Sometimes people become addicted to pain pills because they're seeking relief for pain that they're experiencing that oftentimes is an attachment and not really something physically causing them pain. They like to create the pain, to create the addiction, because it creates the rippling effect throughout the family that addiction causes. Job loss, divorce, running your car into the neighbor's living room if you come home drunk. I mean, so many things. It not only affects the immediately people in the house, but it has this rippling effect out into the community. And these dark entities, they feed off of the loosh that is created by these incidences happening. And then it enables them to do more physical acts. And of course, they like hanging out in certain areas once they've got a good thing going. So anyway, with that being said, that was pretty much with the things that occurred in the first book. That was where the Hell Dog was, and it manipulated the doorknob and the stairs, made it very, very hard to unlock the door. Like I said, the young man was crossed over, and when the lady had come and we went in through the back door, when the Hell Dog presented at the top of the landing where we were on the upper level, it made that gurgling didgeridoo sound that I had heard several times before when it was in a room, and also when my friend Ellen got attacked to the point of bleeding. And the lady was then talking to it, and I asked her, I said, why is that thing so ugly? She says, it's not ugly where it came from, and she was conversing with it and somehow managed to take care of the situation until someone else tried to help and let everything back out. But so you wanted to know about the Hell Dog. That's the Hell Dog. That's in the first book.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You wanted to know about the Hell Dog. Then
Yeah.
you wanted to know about the elementals and the Fae.
Yeah. That's quite a lineup of characters.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I just had one quick question before we wrap up with the Hell Dog. It is stairs would be high ground for people or animals. Is there something? Was there a symbolism to controlling the stairs?
Yes, they like stairwells, they like hallways, partially because they're enclosed for the most part, and they can be moved by the movement of air, which is why they kind of avoid being around, say, ceiling fans and air conditioners. They like being around fuse boxes, and in this case, the stone fireplace, which emitted an energy, a natural energy of its own. So they like being in areas that are condensed because then they aren't moved around as much, if that makes sense. So it did control the stairs. It controlled the locks, the deadbolt on the door. There were so many issues with it, and I don't want to give it all away because I want people to enjoy the book. But that is a key piece. I mean, that lock was definitely a problem throughout. And the very first time that I saw the hell dog, just as a description of what it looks like, if you want to know, I had just finished painting a room. My children and I, it was our second night spending the night there. My kids had hauled all the blow up mattresses into the master bedroom, and they were sleeping. And I'm in the kitchen washing out the paintbrushes. And when I came out of the kitchen, there was this wrought iron railing that prevented you from falling over the descending stairs. And the ascending stairs were right at the end of that, coming upward. And I'm standing there and I see out of my peripheral vision this thing come across the white double entry doors up the stairs in front of me and shooting down the hallway. And in that moment, I just froze. And I'm like, what on earth was that? And I'm rationalizing. I'm like, because still I'm thinking, oh, that there's no such thing. There's no such thing. So I'm thinking maybe it was a bicycle going underneath the street light that would make that turning and thing coming up. But really, that would be impossible if you think about it. And there weren't window dressings on all of the windows. So I thought that somehow it was a reflection. But again, it can't come up from the ground and shoot down the hallway. So all of a sudden, I hear my dog ferociously growling. And the dog is a whole story in itself. As a matter of fact, Animal Planet wanted the story because of the dog, with the house, of the things that occurred with the dog also. But I had to say no because there were too many things that they wanted to tweak and change. And I didn't want anything changed. I wanted it to be truthful and exactly the way that it happened, because it was a good enough story the way that it was. I mean,
It's understandable.
So I didn't want to embellish it. So hearing my dog ferociously growling kind of snapped me out of my funk in that moment. What I saw was coming up the double entry doors up in front of me. It appeared to be, I'm 5'9". I think I've shrunk an inch now. I'm 5'8". But this thing stood about 5'6" or 5'7". It stood up on its haunches. The feet were moving very, very fast under its body, so it appeared fluttering. It had a large tail like a squirrel. It also had ears like a rabbit, but they were on each side of its head like the FTD man, and they were turned backwards so that as it was hunched, it would graze over the tops of its shoulders, and its hands kind of came out, and it kept it kind of close to the body. The face actually looked horse-like, with a narrowing to the end of the face, almost like a dragon. But the nares, the nose openings were so large that it took up almost the whole end of the face, and the skin was a dull brownish color, and it just kind of like laid over bone is what it looked like, because you could see the indentations of that. And it shot down the hallway. So, and this is a spoiler alert, but a lot more stuff happened. So I went down to quiet the dog because my kids were sleeping, and they needed to get up the next morning because we had to leave to go do something. So I go down, and my dog was a little black schnauzer, and she is standing inside of the doorway of the master bedroom, and she's got a ridge of hair. I've never seen her do this. A ridge of hair up on the back of her neck that's standing straight up. And she was fixated on the opening of that doorway. And when I walked in, I kind of petted her. She put her ears back for a minute. And, and of course, I'm trying to rationalize too. And I'll go back to the dog in a minute, because I'm thinking, oh, I've been painting and the fumes and my blood sugar's probably low because I haven't eaten and it's late at night. I'm seeing things, so I'm rationalizing it that way too. Boy, I have a wild imagination. So, so I ended up taking her outside. I had to carry her back in because she was bulking and refusing to come back in as she had done in the entire time that we were there, darting around looking for exits. She did not want to be there. And so when she came back in, she nestled in between the two kids. I showered and crawled in bed with the kids too. And the next morning when we woke up, I said to my daughter, Brittany, I said, how did you sleep? And she said, I didn't. She said, I felt like something was standing in the doorway staring at us all night long. And my son, when he woke up, had bite marks on his legs. Now, the night before, he had taken a bath. He had on this little matching set of Hot Wheels or whatever it was that he was into at that time. It was a little short sleeve with the shorts, the matching shorts with the character on it that he loved to wear. And I would have noticed those marks on his legs because there were two on one leg, one the calf, one near the thigh on the side, and the other one was on the thigh as well, more towards the front. And you could literally count the teeth marks. They were purple. It expanded the upper and the lower. They were too small to be my dog's teeth, and she wasn't prone to biting anyway, but they were bigger than like a rat. So like maybe a dachshund bit him. You know what I'm saying? Like that size of an animal. And I asked my son, I said, Austin, you've got bite marks on your legs. What happened? And he looked down and he starts touching them. And he says, well, I don't know. I'm thinking to myself, to leave bruises like that, anybody would have had to have felt that. And he did not feel it. He was oblivious. It happened during the nighttime while he was sleeping. And he didn't even know, that it had done. And at that point, I didn't take my kids back there anymore. So, until after I had all these blessings done and stuff, and I took them back one more time, which was a mistake. But anyway, I'm not sure, but I think that the hail dog may still be there. I did cross by after I had sold the house. I was on the interstate and I was heading in that direction. There was a backup of traffic. So I got off the exit, which just so happened to be the exit where the house was. And I went past the street that was like the cross street for the house. And the better part of me got, I'm trying to cut through to get to a shortcut to get back on the interstate after passing that traffic buildup. There was an accident. And I passed by the street that the house is sitting on. It was the second one in on the right-hand side. And I see this sign in the front yard. Well, I assumed that it was in the front yard because of where it was sitting. Since the lots were so large, it could have been in the edge of the other people's yard or in the yard of the house that I just sold. And I went to the next street and it got the best of me. And I'm like, okay, I stopped for a minute. I had to know if it was a for sale sign, because I had hoped that those people were right. I had hoped that all of the efforts that I had made had maybe had a delayed effect and finally worked, because I had so many denominations of religion in there to get those things out. And none of it worked. Found out later on why. But anyway, so I'm sitting at the stop sign, one block over from the house, and I said a prayer. I'm like, oh, dear Lord, please protect me. Please don't let the people come out of their house. I don't want to be invited in, type thing, because I figured that if they saw me, they would do that. So I drove off and I got onto the street, and I'm trying to be inconspicuous, and I'm driving slowly and quiet, and I passed the house. I go down to the end of the street. It was a dead end street. And I turn into these people's driveway, back out, and I start coming back in the opposite direction, heading towards the stop sign. And just as I get in front of the house, my radio blares on all by itself, full blast. I can't get the channel to change. I can't get it to shut off. Let me tell you, I left skid marks getting off that street. I got to that stop sign and peeled out. And as soon as I started to get down the road, the radio shut itself off. So to me, it was like a calling card that they knew I was there, and they were letting me know that they were still there too. And I never went back. after that. And also, it was a for sale sign by owner. The people that I sold the house to were in fact selling the house. So I don't know, what happened after that. But yeah, it was, you don't realize how little help there really is out there for this kind of thing that is legitimate. You'll get people that want to come and take pictures and sell them online
Right.
and make money off of it, or they want to come over and have them touch Blinky like they're a bunch of trained monkeys, and then they leave you there with those stirred up, now stirred up and angry spirits that are going to attack you and your family after they leave. So it just, yeah, there's so many things that I've learned about the spirit world too, is that when you do enter into a home that is inhabited by some spirits, that you do need to go in with a form of respect, as if you were entering someone's home that is a human. You knock first, you say hello, type thing. I get a little bit upset with some of the paranormal groups because they'll get these little balls out and they'll say, okay, well, touch Blinky, and the spirit will accommodate. And they don't realize how much energy it takes for them to have to bring together in order to be able to have the ability to even do that. And Blinky will go off and they'll all go, oh, did you see that? Blinky went off. Well, let's ask him again. And then they ask him again and they touch Blinky again and Blinky goes off. Oh, did you get that? Did you get that? Blinky just went off. And then they go to do it a third time and then they wonder why the spirit's screaming at them to get the what out of the house, because you can't go in and do that. If somebody came into my house and kept telling me to touch Blinky, I'd get aggravated too. How rude is that? So I am very proud of some of the paranormal teams that are now going in more polite, with more respect, not with that scratch me thing, but going in and thank you for allowing us to come here, and visit with you, and having respect for them. And would you show us around? The ghosts will happily, in some cases, will even walk with you and show you around, and yeah, it doesn't mean that they want to leave. Some of them still want to stay there. But and a lot of times too, people mistake these little shorter beings in the house as ghosts, and they're not. They're elementals and fae. And the problem is that elementals and fae were here at the time of Earth's creation. They currently live on the earth with us, paralleling, boots on the ground at the same time. But because their frequency is elevated above ours, we can't see them. Just like Bigfoot has learned to manipulate their frequency so they can disappear, smell and all, on a moment's notice and be standing right next to you and you won't even know it. Same thing, that they're boots on the ground. They're here all of the time. And but people sometimes mistake them as children, and they're not. Brian Bowden has met Bob up close and personal. He did remote viewing and met him that way. He then met him in person at the Gettysburg. Bob did come with me. I constantly had people approaching me saying, oh, you have a little boy following you around. And I'm like, yeah. He didn't mention it was an ugly little boy, because of course they look very different and kind of strange to us, but to me, he's adorable. But they were right. And he would sit in the chair at my desk and his feet would go back and forth like windshield wipers. And he'd sit there with this grin on his face, watching people, just fascinated, being invited to come along. And he'd ride in my backseat of my car. He still does from time to time. He's mostly at the Louisiana house. But I was there breaking down my my table, and Brian had come over and he said to me, there's Bob. I said, yeah, that is Bob. And he says, and he's sitting there and his feet are going like this and he's smiling. I said, yeah, he is. And he was. So Bob has been seen by multiple. I had Jim and Melissa Rupert come out to the house. Jim saw him up close and personal himself, because Bob couldn't resist peeking in to see who the guests were. There's a whole story to that started out really, really bad. And ended up being something very wonderful. And it goes to show that love conquers, truly does conquer all. Bob and I'm getting ready to turn the property into a retreat so that people of like mind can come and sit amongst the elementals. The difference between the elemental and fae is that they'll meet you at the gate, whereas the ghosts sometimes will stand back and wait to watch to see what you're doing first instead of coming forward. So, but they don't. They are on it. I most recently went to the Louisiana house, and I was literally blessed with a beautiful carpet of wild purple pansies lining both sides, and it's a 2-acre lot, and lining the entire front area. I've got a 7-foot fence around the entire property with a gate that you have to open to go onto the property, lining the entire front on both sides of the street of these gorgeous wild purple pansies with at least 25 or 30 yellow butterflies flitzing in and out of those flowers. That to me, I knew that it was a gift, a welcome home kind of gift from them. When I went in to open the gates to drive my vehicle in, they had taken a cattail and put it right in the middle of my driveway about 10 feet in. So a bird must have dropped it there. There was no way that it could have been broken off and placed there unless something had purposely done it as a gift from them. And of course, I take them crystals, and Bob loves beignets and Oreos. He does, especially the double stuffed ones. He loves the Oreos. So because they like things that we eat, and they're here to help us. And the human realms, including the Native Americans, have betrayed them so badly. I mean, as you and I were talking last night on the phone, I was telling you about how the Native Americans would feed the puckwedgies to the giants by tossing them up into the air to keep the giants from eating their tribes, and they would betray them. And so many times the elementals and fae would come to help the farmers and help their crops grow. Oh, and that's something interesting too, and I'll go back to it. Bob told me that if you take a seed, a vegetable seed that you want to plant to eat, and you expectorate on it, that seed has the ability to analyze your saliva, and anything that you have a deficit in, when you plant that seed, the vegetation that grows with it will have everything that you need to balance your system when you eat it. And I thought that was amazing. So I've learned so many beautiful things. He sets up crystals in the yard so that it looks like a quilted yard, but instead of squares, it's triangles of lines of silver and gold and blue there, which are all portals that bring in beautiful spirit animals at night and bring in other fae and elementals. I have pictures of these things. So I have proof, people. I have pictures that I took with my own camera of many of them, that will blow your mind. So there are other beings that God has created to help us, but they've been demonetized by traditional religion because of the reason being that when Lucifer was in heaven, the most intelligent, beautiful angel of music, God's favorite for that matter, was over the fae and the elementals. And then, of course, we all know that he decided to take things in his own hand and got kicked out. But aimlessly, the elementals and fae followed their leader, kind of like the Hatfields and the McCoys. You know, they don't question, they just follow along. So when he was kicked out, they followed along. But the truth of the matter is that they can't be demons, because they have the ability to experience joy and love and sadness. They grieve loss of loved ones. Bob had a white rabbit that he lost, that was his companion, that he still to this day grieves as the loss. And demons can't do that. They don't have the ability to love. They don't have the ability to feel joy and happiness. As a matter of fact, it's a repellent for them. They shrivel up like raisins and run off. They think that you're the crazy one. They want no part of it. And these beautiful beings, the joy that they emit and that comes with them when they are around, you can't help but smile. I mean, it's almost like the same kind of energy that comes that the angels and the other realms bring at the time of someone transitioning. It's that same. There are not human words that can describe it. There's no feeling that can touch it. It just is. And anyone that has experienced it will know exactly what I mean, because there are no words, no human words that can describe it at all. But it's turned out to be such a beautiful, beautiful thing. They were recently, I was told that they were all excited because one of the neighbors had put in a, they said that one of the neighbors had put in a swimming pool. And I'm in South Carolina. This house is in Louisiana. So I asked my maintenance worker, I said, hey, did one of my neighbors put in a swimming pool? And he says, yeah. And they play really, really great music too. So this was conveyed back to me, and I had no idea that my neighbors had put in a pool. I was told this, and how excited they were all, oh, you know, it was a big deal that there was a pool with water and things like that. So they are so full of love, and their hearts are so joyous and full, and they're just precious. They're just precious gifts. You know, one of the books that I'm writing is to convey that, so that it can take that dark connotation away, because it's impossible for them to be of any form of darkness. Darkness would not be able to exist fully in their world because of their ability to have love and joy. So, and I've got so many things to share in that way in the book that brings it out of the importance of rocks, the way that some of the beings work under the ground. Now, I've learned also that house in Louisiana is on a crossroad of ley lines, and it's actually a portal itself. So a lot of other things come into. I did have to clear the property. There were some issues that were not so friendly, that were also holding the elementals and fae in a bad way, that I had to have removed. I had some feral spirits on the property as well that I had to place in an area off to the side so that they could be at peace and rest. But now the only things that are on the property are the fae and elementals, hundreds of them, and of course Bruce, which is the resident Cajun, who is always smiling. He has his straw hat on, and he will invite you and tell you about how he had a one-room shack that was built between the oak trees that literally disintegrated there, and that if you dig down, you'll even be able to find things that belong to him, you know, in there. And he just likes to come. He has crossed over, but he loves to come back because of the views. Again, the morning views and the evening views. There's a cow pasture in front. Cows are far enough away that you can't smell the cows, but you can hear them in the distance. But the beautiful sunrise and the full moon, it's just heavenly there. And it's so peaceful and restful and healing. And so, like I said, I'm going to be doing, Airbnb it's set up for right now, but I am going to be doing some retreats coming up there for people to come and sit with the fae and the elementals, and let them tie knots in your hair, which they will do. They will steal your things. They like things that are shiny and silky, but they will return them if you ask. But every time I wake up there, my hair's all tied in knots, because they play with the hair and things like that. And they're just, you can't help but be joyous when you're around them, because they have so much giggling and fun and play. And it's just, I'm hoping for people to experience it and enlighten their lives in that way, that they start to accept them as their help again. God put them here as helpers. And they haven't been able to do that for a long time because of the mentality of the humans on this earth right now in the third dimension, areas where their frequencies are stuck, where they want to own and possess things. You know, and I had even had a conversation with the fae and the elementals when they asked me to write the books to bridge the gap between the fae and the humans. And I said, are you sure? Because you know, people are going to want to own you like you're a genie in the bottle kind of thing. They're going to want to possess you, and they're going to have expectations and demands. And they're like, yes, it's time, because there are so many people right now that are going through this shift to where their frequency is elevating more into the fifth realms. And a lot of the third is going to fall away. But those that are elevating into the fifth realms are going to start seeing angels and elementals and different things that you don't normally see, because your frequency is now elevated to where theirs is at. So, and you're of a new mindset as well.
So do you think that being a believer, having a faith, is compatible with being a paranormal investigator? I mean, it's I don't know how much you're really investigating. Just like they just kind of follow you around. But
yeah, I don't usually investigate. You're right; they do follow me around. I will not allow people on the property that profess to be witches or warlocks. I don't want that kind of darkness brought on the property. I do request that people, if they are into the paranormal, that they take care, that they take their salt bath, that they do their Psalms, 91, and that they make sure that their fields are clear, because I don't want anything carried onto the property. I had to clear so much of that off that was left over because it was on sour soil for so long that I had to do a lot of spiritual cleansing and prayer for that. There's so much more to just even Christianity than meets the eye, for that matter. I think that whatever a person is involved in their lifetime is where they're supposed to be for whatever message that they're supposed to get, and that it's not wrong at all. I do believe that there is a creator. I know for a fact that there are angels. I've seen them. I also know that there are hell dogs. So there's some place that they come from too. So when people ask, is there a hell? Oh, yes, there is. I've seen what comes from there. Are there angels? Yes, I've seen them too. I've also seen beings that, when my mother passed and the spirits came in to collect my mother, I noticed that as my mother was walking out with my sister who had been murdered and her mother, they were walking along, all spirits. I noticed that walking with them were the angels, but there were also these beings that appeared to be from somewhere else. And they were so tall, even though the ceilings were very, very high, like over 10 feet, it was like capping them, like on their heads right here, because they were so very, very tall. I don't know if they were male or female. It didn't matter, because they were just gorgeous. And they emanated this beautiful energy, the same as the angels did, but they didn't have wings like the angels did. And it appeared that they were from somewhere else. They did kind of look human, but there were some changes to their faces. So when people talk about aliens, you think of ET. These are not ET aliens, but they are from somewhere else. And if you think about it, there are so many stars in the sky that are actual suns for solar systems similar to ours, thousands, tens of thousands of them, that it would be ignorant on our part to believe that we are the only ones. There are other solar systems with planets like ours circling around them. So when those beings go through their lifetime of whatever they've planned out for themselves, and they complete their lifetime and they leave their bodies on those planets, they also need to go someplace too. So they go to the same place where the collective consciousness is that we all end up going to if we choose to cross over. So when people talk about the aliens versus the angels, everybody's right, because both of them are there. So, and I'm not talking about the cryptid, creepy things, people. I'm not talking about ET. The things that are there are of a higher frequency, from other dimensions, from other planets, from other solar systems, and they're just luminous and beautiful, and I could draw them. I mean, they walk with the angels when they're walking out with people, and they're like a guide almost. And they're also created by the creator. So, God's been busy, and God is my word for that I use for source that way. But he's very busy. And yes, he has a lot of things that he has to use to delegate jobs to because he has to. I mean, it's just we're a lot of work, and that's for sure, keeping us on the, on a decent path for the most part, or the path that we chose, whether it's good or bad. There are always reasons for it.
Okay. What in your research, observations of all these different scenarios, I don't know, maybe the hospital would be the best example, but are you finding any evidence of reincarnation, or do we just have, like, just the one shot of living, then the afterlife?
There are two types of people that come into these lifetimes. Some are reincarnated and some are incarnated. Most of us, like myself and you and the lovely lady behind the scene back here, Barbara, we are incarnates. We volunteered to come in and exactly for this time where this frequency is raising, and I'm probably sure of all of us are questioning ourselves, wanting to have our head examined because of all of the chaos and drama that is going on at the current moment. However, the difference between a person that reincarnates versus someone that incarnates is at the time of death, the person that reincarnates comes here to meet karmic debt and learn. So when they go through their life review, the same as everyone goes through life review, they are then put into schooling to tweak and correct anything that maybe they missed, or something that they needed to do a little bit better, or something that they need to do to do again, type thing. Whereas incarnates go through more of a debriefing. So they all go through their life review, but one set goes through a debriefing and one set goes through more schooling. The ones that go through schooling come back through. The incarnates can linger in heaven, which is gorgeous. There they've got these unbelievable giant buildings, and they resemble actually Grecian buildings with the pillars and the scrolly things. And a lot of times people talk about the substance that is used for the buildings as marble, but it's more of an alabaster because it has that little bit of opalescence to it. The marble does not have. The buildings have no seams. They're connected and they're just ever so rounded slightly, so nothing is sharp. Most of them don't have roofs in the sense that we do, where if you're floating above them, you can actually look down and see right through the roof into the buildings of where the schools are and different things like that. But they are giant buildings. The people, they look like ants walking around, going in and out of these buildings, like the schools, for schooling, or they have the Akashic or Akashic records, however you say it, whatever part of the United States you come from. And then this big dome building too, where you go in for your life review, where it's almost like this big dome thing and your life is playing out in front of you. And I wanted to say too, we're not judged, we judge ourselves. And it's actually more effective that way if you think about it. If you were to go in and you had an angel and a loved one standing with you, and they're pointing out the fact that you hit somebody in the eye, and they show you the rippling effect of that you made, the poor kid lost his eyeball and went blind, you might sit there and rationalize, well, he spit at me first. But when you go in and you are judging yourself, you have to own it. You can't go in and excuse your bad behavior. You have to feel and be put into the shoes of the person and the rippling effect of his lifetime and other people's lives that revolved around his life or her life. And you can't get away from it. So you judge yourself, and it's really, I think, more effective that way, to do that. We do choose our parents, people. We do come in with a basic script that has multiple ways that it can go. We also have multiple exits that we can leave our lifetime, but suicide is not one of them, people. So that one's not an option. People that do commit suicide don't go to hell, but it's something that is very, 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 very frowned upon because of the rippling effect that it creates. When you come in with a contract, there are people counting on you. You have children that may be coming in that might have the cure for cancer, or be able to build flying cars, or something coming that is futuristic that's going to be important for mankind. And when you cut your life short, it's very selfish, and it not only creates a deficit rippling effect on this earth, but it creates a vacuum going upwards in the heavenly realms for all of the generations that you interrupted because of your selfishness. So you do have multiple times that you can leave that are natural causes. Suicide is not one of them. So yeah, you actually are immediately, you don't get to have the grand reception of meeting with your loved ones and family or your pets like everybody else does. You immediately go into a schooling realm, and then you're placed right back into a situation that is similar, maybe even worse than the one that you were originally in, so that you can come back to that point and hopefully have better coping skills and not do the suicide again. But even with that, it doesn't change the fact that there are generations of beings that are waiting to come in based on the format or the foundation that you're setting by being here. So I just wanted to mention that too. But they do not go to hell. Most of them will admit that they immediately regret the act in itself, for those that have been able to be revived or to live through it. It's considered a sudden death. As I said too, there are differences. There are the 3 different kinds of death. Most of us have a natural death. The sudden death is handled differently because people are almost in a shock when they're catapulted out of their body or something traumatic happens. They're still kind of earthbound in that shock mode because they haven't crossed over yet. They usually are bargaining, and to bring on the reception, the beautiful reception that everybody gets, would be a little overwhelming. I mean, they need to understand that they've died first. So once they have acknowledged that, then they get to have the reception and everything that everybody else always does. Not people that commit suicide, though. And of course, the near-death experience, you have people walking over bridges, going through tunnels, and just landing in special gardens, things like that. And they're given messages and they're sent back. So they bring back information, for us, and they talk about, the different tunnels and seeing people also in the ethers, for lack of the better word, the peripherals, kind of floating in the air as well, and what all happens with that. But again, it's not a finished death, so there's still so much more to it. When you can get the answers from the other side, talking about what the buildings look like, talking about the fact that, like for instance, if you're an artist, and most artists will tell you that when they are looking at a canvas and they're getting ready to paint, they can envision in their mind already what that picture is going to look like complete 90% of the time. And that's because those pictures they already have in their homes in heaven. They do have homes like ours, but again, the walls are different. They're more opalescent, and the light emits from within the atmosphere itself. There's not like a sun, or they emit from within the walls that are almost like an opalescent thing. The roofs are the walls are very tall. The roofs are kind of clouded and see-through, and you can kind of come through those. Or if you don't want to stay in heaven, or you can be in 6 places at one time, and part of you wants to stay there. Heaven literally turns into, like what my mom has said, like an airport, and you just go down terminals to other places that you might want to go visit and see, or other, that you go on that way, and you can always, come back there just by thinking. Your mind is such a powerful tool for traveling and experiencing and everything on the other side, communication, everything. And you had mentioned too about ghosts and the fact that they still have that appearance. The soul doesn't have that appearance. The soul is still perfect and intact. People with Alzheimer's, I want to mention that, because a lot of times people with Alzheimer's, the way that I see them, they're literally half in and half out of their body. So they're actually riding up here. Their soul is still perfect and intact, but it's not aligned with the body. So they don't have all of the connection that they should have. However, when they come closer to that time of transitioning, the two align. And that's why a lot of times patients will start having lucid moments. Even if I can share a story with you about a lady that I took care of named Shirley who had Alzheimer's, I would love to do that.
Sure. Can you make it less than like about 5 minutes?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Okay, I was at the nurse's station getting ready to pass my meds, and all of a sudden I see this lady named Shirley kind of tooling along with her feet in her wheelchair. I remember Shirley when I had worked at the facility for 10 years. I remembered Shirley when she was up walking around volunteering, bringing magazines to the residents' rooms. And now she had her Alzheimer's was so bad that she hadn't spoken a word in 3 years. So I'm in the nurse's station. I overhear somebody screaming out, "Take me home, take me home, please, please take me home." I come out of the back. I'm looking up and down the hallway. I don't see anybody, and there sits Sally in front of the station. So I'm assuming that whoever was yelling for help, that someone addressed it. They went in and checked on the person. Where Shirley was sitting, she was facing down the hallway where there was a woman that was actively passing. It was the first door on the right. She was within 30 minutes of passing. So I go back into the nurse's station, and all of a sudden I hear, "Take me home, please, please take me home." And I turn around, and it's Shirley calling out. And I hadn't heard her voice in 3 years. And so I walked over and I'm stroking her arm, and I said, "Miss Shirley," I said, "who are you talking to?" And she pointed in the direction of the woman's room that was actively passing. And she says, "Look at the angels. Aren't they beautiful?" And sure enough, with my gift, I looked down the hallway, and bulging out of the walls of this woman's room were all of these huge angels and loved ones that were coming in to collect her. That's another thing too. I've got 2 minutes left. I'm going to say this. People, your loved ones are always with you. If they're empty seats at a wedding or a graduation, I can guarantee you that they're not empty, that there are loved ones sitting in those. They are at every event and everything, and they're planning to be there even before you know the event is going to happen. So when you say, "Oh, I wish Dad could see this," or "I wish Mom was here for the wedding or for the baby being born," they're there. So just know that they're there, and never stop talking to your loved ones that have passed away. And also, your prayers to angels are important to state out loud, because then they are activating. And people don't realize that if you think it, they can't activate on it as much so as if you verbalize it, even if it's quiet. So continue talking to them. They can hear you just like you can hear us. And they can respond in special ways by leaving things like feathers or hairs or pennies or ladybugs.
The
or
cattails.
Right, cattails. Or you can smell their perfume or their cigar smoke or something that was uniquely theirs to let you know that they're still with you. So never stop talking to them. They can hear you. So I'm good.
Okay, Lynn, you want to let everyone know about your website, and we'll wrap it up there. We want to leave plenty of room to make sure that these shorts can be seen by all the fans who want to review the archives. So go ahead, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Okay, I have my books on Amazon. Not all of them are on Amazon, just some of them. I've started shifting them to my website. If you purchase them from my website, they're a little bit cheaper, and I'll gladly personalize them and sign them for you. My website is www.lynnmonet.com. I'm currently streaming on Gaia on Beyond Belief with George Norrie. I'm also on Coast to Coast multiple times. I'm on with Linda Moulton Howe on Earth Files, as well as Dave Scott with SOR Radio and many, many others. I am going to be completing my MACE practice here pretty soon, so I'll be able to help people energetically remove feelings that are holding them behind and creating situations for them to react instead of respond. And then you can start living as a responding person instead. And you can get a hold of me through my website. Again, that's www.lynnmonet.com. So there's a way to an email Dropbox there that you can get into and reach out to me. And yes, I'm still answering my own emails. I am running weeks behind. I'm sorry, but eventually I will get to it. So please be patient.
All right. Well, I think that was a fascinating look at, the afterlife and other aspects of the paranormal, whatever you call it. I had a great time.
I
Thank
did
you very
too.
much. Yeah, Lynn, it was a great show, and thanks, Barbara, for keeping us on the air. And we will see
Barbara.
everyone sometime soon. And Barbara has a show, I think, Thursday night. So thanks again, and we'll see everyone in a couple weeks.